Hey, true crime fanatics, this is Claire.
And I'm Andy.
You're tuned in to the Homicide Hobbies podcast, which is a podcast for people who love to hear about the horrendous crimes that people commit. Enjoy. So where are we headed today?
Today?
You forgot?
No. But today is pre-Halloween case. But we'll be in a place where chess is the national obsession. Children as young as 4 are enrolled in chess schools, and grandmasters were treated like rock stars.
Korea.
This place had an amber room. It was once called the eighth wonder of the world, which was a jewel-encrusted chamber that disappeared during World War II, and to this day, nobody knows exactly where it went.
Are you sure your facts are real? You can't get them off of a movie. That's not real life.
This place is the largest country by area, so large it covers 11 time zones, but has a smaller population than Nigeria.
Russia?
Yeah, good job. And I apologize for my voice. I don't know why I lost my voice.
She ate rocks.
It sure sounds like I gargled with some rocks. Yep. I didn't, I swear. But today we're traveling to Russia to meet a man who gave the phrase dinner with friends a whole new meaning.
What? How many meanings can there be?
His name is Arkady.
Food and people you know.
And if the name Arkady doesn't ring a bell, buckle
Sure
up,
doesn't.
because Arkady isn't just remembered as a murderer, he's remembered as a cannibal, and not the solo kind.
Ew.
Arkady had a dinner companion, but we'll get to that in a minute.
That he ate?
So this case has everything that makes true crime both horrifying and surreal. A creepy...
Hold up. Can I just say that dinner with friends is not dinner with friends if you're the hors d'oeuvre?
It involves a creepy recluse, a young landlord, a child groomed into a role of cannibal sidekick, and an ending that left more questions than answers. By the end of the story, you'll probably be both nauseated and morbidly fascinated.
Sure glad I had breakfast.
You're welcome.
It wasn't Dave. Thought that would be comforting information.
You've been sick a real long time.
I'm sick because I didn't eat my husband?
No, that's where your brain...
That don't make any sense.
That's where your brain went. So, Arkady Zverev was born into poverty and raised in a single-parent household. He wasn't born a monster, but he wasn't exactly born charming either. He came from a long familial line of serious mental health issues. When I say a long line, I mean it's dated back to his great-grandparents, all the way down the line to his mother.
They're all cannibals?
No, they all struggle with mental health issues. So, growing up, he was the type of kid that teachers remembered for being intelligent, but unsettled. Which I think if you're a teacher and you see a kid that's like super intelligent, but you see that there's no support in any way, shape, or form, and he's just set up for disaster, that's got to be hard to watch.
Yeah.
And to add to poverty stressors, Arkady's mother, she worked as a postal worker, and she ended up being attacked while at work, and she became permanently disabled and unable to go back to work.
Like by a dog?
No, by some crazy dude.
Was it his dad?
Sure wasn't. But she was granted a disability pension. However, it was such a minuscule amount, it made life that was already very poverty stricken even more difficult. Arkady would often show up to school hungry and absolutely filthy.
What year is this?
I didn't tell you that, did I?
Sure didn't.
This is early 2000s.
Okay.
When Arkady was still in school, he didn't lash out or start fights, but he just radiated the kind of energy that made people like kind of step away from him. Like, okay, this guy seems a bit crazy. And Arkady was known for being abnormally quiet. He found comfort in music rather than in people. When Arkady was in middle school, he decided he wanted to begin pursuing his musical passions. By the time he was in high school, the school was doing psychological tests on the students, and Arkady failed miserably. He was diagnosed as schizophrenic, calling into question his mental health. Soon, he began seeing a psychiatrist and being prescribed several strong medications. His neighbors thought he was eccentric, kind of creepy, sure. Dangerous? Not really. But people brushed him off with a laugh and just, they were like, this kid's really weird. They would find out that was a colossal mistake. By the time he was a young man, Arkady was just drifting. No real career, no real friends. He'd spend most of his time isolated, dabbling in whatever dark obsessions caught his attention in the moment. And while most people hide their worst thoughts, Arkady wasn't shy. He would casually talk about cannibalism the way other people might talk about their favorite band. He was really curious and wanted to eat somebody. He's curious what their flesh would taste like.
It's because he ate his own scabs and were like, this wasn't too bad. I wonder what other people's scabs taste like. And then he was like, you know what? Screw frozen or dried flesh. He wants some fresh pieces.
Maybe. But there was also a kinder side to Arkady. And one afternoon when he was walking home, he came across a homeless gentleman. And Arkady felt sorry for this feller. And like someone who finds a stray critter, Arkady was like, you know what? Come with me. You can come home with me. Meanwhile, Arkady's still living with his mom. I can just say if one of my older teens brought home a homeless person and told them they could live with us,
You'd clean out the basement.
well, I don't know that I would just let some random stranger move into my house because my kid passed him on a sidewalk, but that was the kind of person Arkady was. Deep down, he wanted to be able to help people, but he also had a darker side to him.
He was hungry, and that guy looked like he had real muscular legs.
I'd also pull my kid aside and be like, hey, so you know what I do with Aunt Claire, right? Have you ever listened to an episode of our podcast? You don't bring strangers home. Just like with a stray dog, you don't stick your hand out to be bit.
What?
Anyway.
It's like you don't know who I am at all.
But anyway, Arkady provided this feller with shelter, clean clothes, and some food for his belly.
What else would he do with the food?
He could have not offered him food, okay?
He said food for his belly. This cucumber here is not for...
This is for the bags under your eyes because you haven't slept in a while.
I'm sorry, I flashed to you putting mayonnaise in your hair. So like,
Shut up.
Your cucumbers for your eyes and this mayonnaise. They'll do
Look.
wonders for your hair.
Why do you feel the...
Just don't sit in full sun.
Oh my gosh. So for those, which is everyone...
I can't help it. Which, by the way, that wasn't where I was thinking of the cucumber going, but
Ew.
eyeballs work too.
No. So the mayonnaise, my mother...
The moral of this story is
Mom,
not to
our
sit
mother...
in mayonnaise in the full sun.
No, our mother told me to put mayonnaise in my hair
if
to
you
make
keep
it
getting
softer.
loud, lady, you're not going to be able to finish this case because your voice is going to go out.
Well, if you would shush it and let me finish a sentence that you're throwing me under the bus on.
Getting squeaky again.
Our mother told me to put mayonnaise in my hair and it would make it softer. And my hair was all the way down to my waist at the time. So I had my head caked with a whole jar of freaking mayonnaise, which she helped me do, by the way, and then sent me outside because she said it stunk. Well, it was the middle of summer. So what happens when you put mayonnaise on your whole scalp
You know what?
and get kicked outside? It dries to your head.
Oh, I figured it out. You know those bag fly traps that they tell you to fill up with water and put too far into somewhere? That was you. Thank you. Your sacrifice kept all the bugs away from the house.
Well, she sent me outside and I sat on the deck in the sun because there was no air.
And rotted.
I did. And then she comes outside, like, I want to say it was hours, but I don't remember accurately how long it was. It was enough that it became a helmet on my head. It was dried. It was disgusting. And she's like, you still have that in your hair? And I was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, thanks for that, Claire.
Mm-hmm.
Sure do appreciate it.
You didn't even get a cucumber.
It's disturbing since I know where you were originally saying the cucumber needed to go. So, ew.
Ew.
I was a
You've been
child.
Sick a real long time.
That's where your brain went.
Except that's where your brain just went as you as a child.
Because you said that's where you were thinking. Anyway.
Not as a child.
It was. We were talking about me as a child with mayonnaise in my hair.
Just now, and you brought up the cucumber. I said nothing.
Yes, you did. So, anyway, Arkady's brought this homeless feller home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gave him some food to eat. And they start having a conversation. This feller confessed to Arkady that the reason he's living on the streets is because he's a bad feller. And Arkady was like, no, you seem like a nice guy. You're okay. I'm sure you're a fine feller. And this guy was like, no, I'm a bad guy. And Arkady's like, no, you seem nice. And this guy's like, no, I killed my own mother. And Arkady was like, what?
All right, you're bad.
And then he was like,
you win.
Right. He repelled in disgust because he was like, how could anybody kill their mother?
How old is he?
He's like 18, 19. Arkady repelled in disgust. How could anybody kill their own mom? And Arkady went in the kitchen to get away from this guy. This guy follows suit and is like, dude, what's your problem? And he tried to give excuses to justify killing his mother. And Arkady was just like, I'm not having it. I don't want to hear it. You're a piece of shit. And the two begin arguing. And then Arkady, being in the kitchen, did what everybody in the kitchen does.
Grab the knife.
Grabbed the knife and started stabbing this guy in the stomach. This action seemed to unleash a beast inside Arkady. Arkady then rips out one of this guy's eyeballs with his bare hands. This homeless feller managed to escape to a neighbor's. The guy told the neighbor he was asleep on the couch and woke up to Arkady stabbing him. The neighbor was horrified because this guy's missing an eyeball and a large amount of his internal organs are just dangling out of his abdomen. As far as any reports go, it would appear that the feller survived, and Arkady was sent to a mental hospital for 2 months. Just 2 months.
He just needed an amp.
He sure did. Then, when Arkady was released from the psych ward, I don't know if he had a birthday in there, but his age, he's like 18, 19 years old.
All right.
Now, during all this, Arkady has girlfriends, but they're brief ones, women who he'd go on a date with. They'd realize something was off about this feller. He wouldn't be violent towards them, but his conversations had a way of kind of curdling the romance into fear. Just to give you an idea, picture this. You're on a date, you're eating dinner, and your boyfriend leans in and says, you know, I think the human heart would taste better boiled rather than fried.
Why?
All right, so maybe you should have dinner with this feller.
I can't think of any protein I would want boiled instead of fried.
You know what? He would have loved Mom's hot dogs.
Under chicken.
No, that was turned into jerky. But that made all the women that he would try to date get the hell out of Dodge. They're like, okay, I'm gonna go use the restroom and just disappear. One by one, these women would vanish from his life, some whispering about his obsessions. Arkady didn't cry over breakups, and he didn't get angry. He just carried on. Another one bites the dust kind of deal. He was inching closer towards someone who wouldn't leave him, someone he could control. And that's when he met a young lady named Olga Semebokov. And I apologize for not pronouncing that correctly. But Olga was beautiful. She was kind. She felt unexplainable feelings for Arkady. Some reports say Olga was 15, others say she was 16. Either way, she was young and Arkady's around 19. It was around 2017, during all this dating, Arkady decided he wasn't going to get trapped into working a traditional job. He wanted to follow his dreams and become a famous musician. So he would go over to Olga's house and be fed by her parents because, if you're not working, can't afford food. And he's still living with his mommy. He has no money. Surprise, surprise. Her parents weren't happy about their 16-year-old daughter bringing home a freeloading, unemployed Looney Tune. Tensions ran high between Olga and her parents because they didn't approve of Arkady and felt he was a bad influence on their baby girl. Olga's entire family disliked Arkady. They tried to encourage her to end the relationship, and one day Olga's grandfather could no longer keep his opinions to himself. And I feel like he was probably like your typical elder. He confronted Arkady. I would assume it was a conversation along the lines of, dude, what are you doing with your life? My granddaughter's young. She has her entire future ahead of her. You're a grown ass adult who refuses to work. And Arkady, not enjoying the harsh realities of his life choices being critiqued, pounced on Olga's grandfather. He proceeded to savagely beat the elderly man.
Oh.
After the brutal beating that he gave the grandfather, Olga's family really didn't like Arkady and demanded Olga in the relationship. However, as most teenage girls would do, I love Arkady, and no one's going to tell me who I can and can't love.
Oh, you need to prepare a person for this.
It's the voice. I can't. It's losing my voice. But anyway, she decided she was going to steal 100,000 rubles, which is the equivalent of 1,100 American dollars, pack a pink little suitcase of her belongings, and she and Arkady ran away to a different city to get away from her family. Sadly, the bright young lady who was doing great in school and had the world at her fingertips had chosen wrong. She moved away with Arkady. Her studies went by the wayside. Olga had to quit the courses she was enrolled in and focus on work in order to afford their apartment because Arkady still wasn't working.
Was a bum.
Yeah, but her being young, dropping out of school, she had limited options. She worked several low-paying jobs to support herself and Arkady.
What a piece of shit.
And then Arkady was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and postpone being a musician, and maybe I should become a tattoo artist. The young couple were surviving off of instant noodles and sushi.
Ugh.
Yeah. Life was stressful to say the least.
My life feels stressful just thinking of that diet.
Olga, feeling alone and stressed, turned to her family. They tried to assist her because she was still their little girl. They gave Olga 40,000 rubles or $450 so she could purchase a tattoo machine for Arkady so he could help pay for their lifestyle.
Hmm.
Just 4 days later would become a controversy on the events of how everything unfolded. But the end result is still tragic either way. 4 days after her family had given her that money to buy the tattoo machine,
She's dead.
Olga was found dead outside their apartment building after having fallen from the ninth floor.
She was pushed.
Interestingly, Arkady and Olga's apartment was on the fourth floor.
What?
How she fell from the ninth floor, I have no idea. According to Arkady, when he decided to hop on social media to post about her death, he said he was asleep when she fell or jumped. He also claimed Olga was suffering from depression and must have decided to jump the 9 stories. After Olga died, Arkady didn't even have the decency to call her family.
Oh.
Instead, they were notified several days later by the police and informed that she was dead and it was ruled a suicide. Olga's family do not believe she committed suicide. They believe Arkady killed her and tossed her body the 9 stories to hide his crime. Another version of this is while they were fighting, he tossed the teen over the rails to her death. I personally agree with Olga's family and think that she realized Arcadia was a freeloading sack of poo and wanted to return to her parents' home. And Arcadia was like, I'm not going to have my meal ticket abandon me just to go home. So they got into an argument and he killed her. And I would personally be curious to see, okay, so they say she fell from the 9th story based off her injuries. I'm curious, is it possible he beat the crap out of her and tossed her off the 4th story because he beat her so badly it looks like she fell further than she did?
Figure that one girl I did a case on, they said she had injuries consistent with like she was hit by a car.
Right. So that's why it's like nobody witnessed it. I mean, they saw her as she fell, so there's speculation as to how far she actually fell, you know?
Yeah.
How did that even happen? But shortly after Olga's death, Arkady decided to move out of their apartment, probably because he couldn't afford to live there. And he began the daunting challenge of looking for his next female, and he needed to find a way to make some money. So
Became a cannibal.
he began working as a street performer. Not a musical street performer, because like music is his passion. No, instead he dressed up like Venom and paced the streets.
All right. We approach life differently.
He would take photos with people walking on the streets and charge them for the photos. I don't think it's surprising when I tell you he struggled as a street performer for months. Then he decided the little bit of money that I guess people felt sorry for him and gave him, he deserved to take that money and go on a vacation.
Sure.
Right. And as luck would have it, that's when he met someone special.
Of course.
That someone special was a girl named Valeria.
Ooh, sounds like you need a treatment.
That someone special was Valeria Yargina. Valeria came from a very troubled background. She spent her infancy to 4 years old being raised by her aunt before returning to live with her parents. Her mother worked as a prostitute,
Of course.
and her father was a pimp. He would regularly beat Valeria, and her hoe of a mother would do absolutely nothing to stop him. I suspect it was because if he was beating Valeria, then mom wasn't being beaten. She never knew what it was like to truly be safe and loved. She grew up a very out of control, unhappy young lady. At the age of 10, she brutally killed a local cat.
Oh.
She set fire to a building where homeless people were sheltering, and that's like a brief peek into her background. If you haven't figured it out yet, Valeria was Arcady's kind of gal. She would frequently talk about death and destruction. She talked about demons and the devil, but in a favorable way, not as in, you got to avoid the bad stuff.
She's inviting them to her parties.
Sure is. There were also stories of Valeria catching animals in the neighborhood and setting them on fire. She would also threaten younger children, asking if they wanted to die or even threaten to kill their parents. When she met Arcadia, she told him all about her woes, and she also confided one of her deep, dark secrets. She confided in him that she'd been sexually assaulted by several different men,
Ew.
which I'm curious if it was her dad and mom pimping her out to perverted men.
Probably.
There's no proof of that, but oh, and did I forget to mention Valeria is only 12?
What?
Yeah, just let that sink in. He's 22.
That's kind of disgusting.
Kind of.
Just a bit.
It's fucking vile. She's 12.
What on earth could they have had to talk about?
I just told you, the devil.
That's on me.
So Arcadia would act as her one-man vigilante, and he went around town beating up several teenage boys for Valeria's honor, meaning Valeria could mouth off to whoever she wanted, and she could put hands on whoever she wanted. And if that person tried to defend themselves in any sort of way, Arcadia would step in and whoop some ass. The two of them are just a disaster. At 20 years old, Arkady began grooming her slowly, positioning himself as her protector, her boyfriend, her guide into adulthood. She was just a lonely child who was isolated, abused, and had no friends. She was the epitome of vulnerable, easy prey. Arkady filled her head with twisted ideas. He would tell her that they were different from everyone else, that normal rules didn't apply to them, and that together they could build a world of their own.
He saw Aladdin.
I don't think he watched the right one.
He-
It didn't take much in the way of manipulation. Most children that age are worried about school, friends, or maybe what they'll get for their next birthday. But Valeria, she was already on a bad path, and now she was on a path of destruction, going hand in hand with a man nearly double her age. On September 23rd, 2018, Valeria told her mother she was going for a walk, but Valeria never returned home. However, Valeria also had a history of running away from home. She usually came back home or her family would eventually track her down. But this time was different. So her mom went and reported her missing. In reality, Valeria had run away with Arkady. The pair began staying in hostels together and stealing food and other necessities from stores. The pair began a nearly 1,500-mile trek across St. Petersburg in search of a place to live and also a place to hide from the police who were looking for Arkady and Valeria. Turns out you can't run away with a 12-year-old.
Who knew?
That's when they came across a man named Alexander Popovich. They met him in a fast food restaurant. He was only 21. He worked as a road worker. He had an interest in writing poetry and literature. Alexander was a well-liked feller. He told Arkady and Valeria, "Hey, you can come back with me. I've got a house on the family farm and you can rent it out for cheap. It's not being used. You guys can stay there." And it was a win-win. Alexander could collect additional funds by renting out a vacant house, and the couple had a roof over their head. After living in the farmhouse for just a few days, one afternoon, Valeria was home alone. This is supposed, okay? But Alexander supposedly approached Valeria and said, "You guys need to give me the rent money we agreed upon when you guys moved in, or you have to have sex with me,
What?
or you guys can get out." And she was like, "I'm not having sex with you. I'm also not giving you money, and I'm also not getting out." So apparently, Alexander was mad and he left. So, from a timeline perspective, Valeria was reported missing by her mother on September 23rd. By October 2nd, she's 1,500 miles away from home. She's living with her 22-year-old boyfriend and supposedly being propositioned for sex by her 21-year-old landlord. That same day, she went out and purchased a large knife for protection.
And she's still 12?
Yeah. Well, they've only been gone for a couple days.
Yeah, but 12?
Yeah. So when Arkady returns home, Valeria tells him about the supposed interaction with Alexander and his demands for sex. Arkady was like, "Oh, yeah? All right. I've got a plan." Or that same day was Alexander's little brother's birthday. So late that evening, the same day that he propositioned her for sex, supposedly, he decided to all of a sudden be a nice feller and he decided to pop down and visit his new tenants. And Alexander brought Valeria and Arkady leftover birthday cake from his little brother's birthday party and some beer. And the three of them just sat around chatting, hanging out. Just, it was seemingly uneventful. And after several beers and the fact that it was really late, Alexander dozed off on the couch. Arkady seized the opportunity and grabbed a very large butcher knife that Valeria had just purchased that day. He lunged at his sleeping landlord, and Arkady began stabbing Alexander. Alexander obviously woke up and tried to defend himself. But both men were drunk, and Alexander was no match for the steel blade. Arkady would stab Alexander more than 20 times, piercing several vital organs. And Valeria took off.
Did she make it up?
I don't know. It's left for speculation. We're definitely jumping ahead in this case, but Alexander's family do not believe, because he wasn't that kind of guy. They don't believe her story. So she took off, right? And
Mhm.
like, what would you do if you're 12 years old, your significant other pounced on a sleeping person and began stabbing them?
I find it hard to relate because I didn't have a significant other at 12.
Okay, well, what if Dave jumped on somebody now and started stabbing somebody? Are you just going to stand there?
What was the reason?
Some made up story.
Well, how do I know it's made up at the time?
You're the one that told it.
Oh, that makes it awkward because I'm very well going to get stabbed if I choose this moment to be like, just kidding. You took that joke a little far.
Well, Valeria, being 12, takes off, but she didn't just run away. No, this crazy girl runs to the kitchen, gets her own knife, and she returned to the living room and joined in on the brutal slaying of Alexander.
Oh.
Alexander succumbed to his injuries within the first few stabs from Arkady. All the rest of the stabs were just seriously vicious overkill. 22-year-old Arkady and 12-year-old Valeria killed Alexander brutally. But death was not the end. It was just the beginning. Together, they began to dismember Alexander's body using an axe, skewers, a hacksaw, and a variety of other cutting tools that they could get their hands on. They sawed off his hands first, then his arms. They attempted to saw off his legs, but couldn't cut through the bones as easily as they had hoped.
Ugh.
So they turned their attention to Alexander's abdomen. They hacked at his stomach with the knives and began pulling out all of Alexander's internal organs. The reason for pulling out his guts? 12-year-old Valeria wanted to see what a person's insides looked like. Then they decapitated Alexander. They used a hammer to crack open his skull to expose his brain. They didn't dismember Alexander to hide his remains or just out of morbid curiosity. They butchered him for dinner. They scooped out a chunk of his brain.
Oh, what the fuck, Andrea?
I feel like this eases us into Halloween and welcomes
No.
the Thanksgiving
Doesn't
season.
ease any. You.
It's not funny, but you're ew. That's what makes me chuckle. But they scoop out a chunk of his brain and then use the frying pan to cook it up. They placed what was remaining of Alexander's severed head into the microwave and cooked it on high for 3 minutes.
How? I don't even.
The killer couple then sat down and ate the fried brain while the severed head cooked in the microwave.
Were they on drugs?
Absolutely none.
So they should have been. I don't know what you're chuckling about.
You're disgust. So before they consumed more of Alexander's brains.
And can I just say, I don't think 3 minutes for any meat would be enough to cook anything.
No, I also don't think a 12-year-old and a 22-year-old homeless man know how to cook anything. So I don't think they knew what they were doing with meat, not cooking humans, but just in general. I don't think the two of them knew how to cook. But before they consumed more of Alexander's brains, they let that cool from the microwave, and they decided to slice up additional organs and cook them. They also ate meat from Alexander's chest. They popped out one of his eyeballs and boiled it.
You enjoy this too much. I can tell you're smiling.
I wasn't.
Something wrong with you.
I wasn't, actually.
Sure.
But they also ate Alexander's heart raw. In case you were curious, they didn't just rip apart Alexander's remains and play chef. No, they consumed all of it. They didn't just like cut him up and cook him. What they cooked, they ate. And they enjoyed it so much that that's where they decided to try his heart raw. And what makes this case infamous is that 12-year-old Valeria was there, watching, participating, eating, like it was all normal, just as it should be. And later, Valeria would describe the heart as chewy and too sweet. It's because it was raw. That's why it was chewy. I guarantee it. But she also said the brain tasted much better. Imagine my 12-year-old daughter giving you a food review on cannibalism like she was auditioning for MasterChef.
No.
For Arkady, this wasn't just murder, it was validation. Finally, someone was sharing in his obsessions. For Valeria, maybe it was survival, Maybe it was brainwashing. Maybe it was a dark curiosity that only a child could slip into without fully understanding her consequences. But no matter how you frame it, what happened that night turned a lonely little girl into a cannibal and an accomplice. The crime obviously did not stay hidden. The following day, October 3rd, 2018, the police were called to the farmhouse after a neighbor knocked on the door because they saw smoke coming from inside the house. And Valeria and Arkady, being the idiots that they are, forgot to turn the stove off before they fell asleep.
Naturally. There were drugs involved. I don't care.
Instead of answering the door to tell the neighbor, everything's fine,
They hid.
the neighbor witnessed a man and a young girl crawling out of the window on the side of the house
It's not suspicious at all.
and more smoke billowing from the house. So that's where the neighbor was like, "Yeah, so we need a fire department." Police come out to the house and obviously they got a kick in the door cuz they need to put the fire out. They're just expecting a house fire. Yeah, they're correct. There's a house fire. They rush inside to put the fire out and render any aid if necessary, but they quickly uncovered a gruesome scene. The police were horrified when they realized there was a human head fried up on the stove like leftovers from a large meal. When one of the officers opened the microwave, they found what was left of Alexander's cooked severed head. The couple turned the oven on to roast more of Alexander's remains, but the stove is what caught fire. The cannibal couple panicked and fled the farmhouse as the fire began to spread and the neighbors came knocking. And the police are told by the neighbors, okay, so this is the description of the young man and an even younger girl that they had briefly been staying there. The neighbors said, we saw him for about a week. And they provided such a detailed description of Arkady and Valeria, who, by the way, the police were already looking for. It didn't take long for them to discover the couple trying to flee at the train station. They were brought into the police station to be questioned. And when questioned, Arkady didn't deny any of it. In fact, he confessed almost proudly. He had no remorse for his actions. Instead, he described the organs he ate like a chef describing a signature dish. When police asked why he would want to eat another man's brains, Arkady told the officers he had been curious about the taste of human brains after his previous girlfriend, Olga, had died falling from a window and cracked her head open, exposing her brains on the pavement, and that he'd been fantasizing about what they tasted like ever since.
So that girlfriend should have considered herself super lucky.
I suppose. When they asked why they killed Alexander, that was when he gave several reasons. The first was that Alexander wanted to have sex with Valeria. Valeria was his girlfriend, so he didn't appreciate Alexander trying to put the moves on her. Next excuse was just because they wanted to see what his insides looked like, so they killed him in his sleep. Another excuse was because Alexander and Arkady had gotten into an argument over rent, and Valeria told Arkady to kill Alexander. Police then turned to Valeria, who they originally thought was kidnapped and forced along with all of this. They turned to her and they're like, "What the heck's going on?" They thought they were rescuing her from a twisted feller, but disturbingly, she seemed content. She didn't recoil when they confronted her about the crimes. She didn't cry. She talked about it as if it was all normal and as if they just were making dinner. She didn't know what the police's problems were. Arkady would never face trial. This coward was officially arrested
He died.
on a slew of charges like murder, cannibalism, having an inappropriate relationship with a child. But just 4 months after his arrest, he botched a suicide attempt, sort of. He tried to hang himself in his cell instead of death.
But he couldn't remember how to tie the knot.
Well, instead of death, he slipped into a coma
Oh.
and lingered in a coma under armed guard at a hospital bed. Eventually his body gave out after a few months and he died in April 2019. In one way, his death closed the case, and another, it robbed Alexander's family of justice.
It sure did rob him.
Yeah, there's no trial, there's no sentence, just a monster who got the easy way out, I guess. And Alexander's mother said she would not shed a tear over the death of her son's murderer. Karma decided this was how he needed to go out, which I guess is a healthy way to look at it.
That's shitty.
Yeah. And then there's Valeria. What happened to her after the murder and consumption of Alexander is disturbing. So the legal age for criminal responsibility was 16 in Russia. It's now 14, but either way, Valeria was 12, meaning in Russia, she cannot be held responsible for her actions. Alexander's mother expressed frustration over the lack of consequences for the twisted little psycho, Valeria. Since the law couldn't touch her, she had no fear in expressing just how little she gave a shit about killing Alexander. She said she had no remorse for her actions. She didn't feel sorry for Alexander's mother, and the reason behind not feeling sorry for her was because she had 2 other children. So what did it matter that they killed one of them?
Oh,
Yeah,
what a little piece of shit.
yeah. This little wackadoo went even further with her crazy by explaining people should actually feel sorry for poor Arkady's mother because she only had 1 child, and that was Arkady, and now he's dead.
Well, I sort of agree, because that was her one kid and he's fucked up, but
Well, that's not the reason why they should feel sorry for her, according to Valeria.
that's why I said sorta.
Yeah. So Russia determined Valeria could not be sent home to her mother because the home was not a suitable environment for a child and stripped her mother of her parental rights.
Oh.
Valeria was sent to go live in an orphanage and she was enrolled in 6th grade at a state school. Her identity would have remained a secret at the school, but just a month into being enrolled at the school, Valeria started telling the other students about her murdering Alexander and cannibalizing him. She let the other children know that human brains tasted much better than human hearts. And of course, some of these kids went home and told their parents, and their parents were like, no.
She didn't get any, like, forced counseling or anything?
No, sure didn't. The parents were pissed that this little nut job was enrolled in the school with their babies, and the parents quickly protested Valeria's enrollment and demanded that she be expelled from the school. And the orphanage was like, Valeria's completely fine. She's a normal child with no deviations.
Sure.
And the parents were like, yeah, no, we're not having any of that garbage. And they continued to protest Valeria's presence at the school. And after the protests continued, eventually Valeria was schooled. Like, it's not really homeschooled because her home is an orphanage, but she was schooled from the orphanage. What do we take from this nightmare? First, never dismiss an eccentric creep who talks about cannibalism at the dinner table. It's not quirky, it's not funny, it's a red flag big enough to cover the entirety of Russia.
Good one.
Second, grooming is insidious. Valeria wasn't born a killer. She was a child who fell under the spell of a predator. Arkady might have died, but the damage he inflicted on her doesn't just vanish. And finally, Alexander. It's easy in a story like this to lose sight of the victim under the grotesque headlines, but he was just 21 years old. He was a landlord, a young man who'd never expected his tenants would turn out
To be vile?
Yeah, right. And he deserves to be remembered not for how he died, but for the fact that his life was stolen far too short. The story of Arkady, Valeria, and Alexander is one of the darkest tales in modern true crime. It's a grotesque mix of murder, manipulation, and cannibalism that sounds too absurd to be real, yet it happened. And Arkady's gone, Alexander's gone, and Valeria is somewhere out there, carrying a past too heavy for anyone, especially a child. But
That's disgusting. And I don't think she's done with whatever nonsense she's going to do with her life.
I don't think she is either. I figured this case was perfect for you, by the way, because you did a case and you said that you had a new fear
The teenagers?
of teens. And since you like to call teens tweens, I thought
She
I'd
is a
bring
twine.
I thought I'd bring you an actual case of a tween for you to fear.
Yeah.
The next time somebody jokes about how people pride tastes like chicken, maybe don't laugh. Maybe change the subject.
I've literally never had somebody joke about people tasting like chicken. I think you need to reevaluate who you're talking to.
Ah.
Because it's clearly turkey. Thank you for listening to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Claire.
I'm Andy.
Follow us each week to get your fix of the atrocities that occur in true crime. And don't forget to tell people about us and rate us if you like us. But don't rate us if you didn't. Just change the channel.